to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. as we look around the globe for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And of course, we're looking for the people that are making a difference as we add 2 billion new people to the planet by 2050. So how are we going to be able to take care of all those basic human needs when we have about 7.5 billion right now? The essence of water, the food, the fuel, the fiber, and of course the housing goes into it. But one of the main challenges that we have is sanitation. There's been a big movement to bring water into least developing countries all around the globe. So now we've actually gone under 1 billion people who do not have adequate water, which is a terrible tragedy. But you think about sanitation, it's almost 1/2 of the world's population, about 3.2, 3.5 billion people without proper sanitation. And so we have a couple here that have been working in the country of Kenya, and it's called Start With One Kenya, and I'm going to ask you about that, Bill, as far as that. And his wife, Chat, is sitting right beside him, and thank you for both of you being here.
Glad to be here.
And we have their logo. I think it's going to be coming up here, Start With One Kenya, if we can bring that up. And Bill, tell us a little bit about what is Start With One Kenya?
Taking the premise that we can make a difference in this world. I started doing research as to the issues going on in the world, and in particular Kenya. I'm one person, and what kind of difference can I make? I believe that we're called to do something, and the distance between integers, between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, so forth and so on, is the same. But I believe the distance from 0 to 1 is the greatest distance of all, because at 0 we're doing nothing. And I think the problems of the world can be solved.
Well, I tell you, I really like this logo that is up on the screen behind us in chat. What are some of the greatest challenges? He said you're only one, but actually you make a good team. And so what is it, 1 + 1 = 3, I think, when you're really getting the power of faith and understanding put together. So what are some of the greatest challenges you've had as far as Kenya itself is concerned?
I think it goes right back to what Bill said, start with one. Sometimes when you start looking at all the needs, it can get overwhelming. And you have to say, stop, take a deep breath, start with one. And when you start with one, you have to work with the Kenyans and say, what is it you want? And we have 5 pillars of work, and so in our 5 pillars we have to stay focused of what do the Kenyans want, what are our 5 pillars, and take your first step.
Okay. Now, looking at chat view, go on, what are the 5 pillars?
So, the 5 pillars that we've got, we do education, we do an entrepreneurial or microfinance, clean water, building, and basically some agriculture for food development, and also healthcare. And on those, if you think about it, they kind of line up with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So what's the challenge? Staying focused, finding out what the Kenyans want, and then of course getting the financial resources to putting all those pieces of the puzzle together.
Well, it's like the old KISS method, keep it simply simple, right? Mm-hmm. And that's exactly the way we want to do that. Bill, looking at it, I know that you're very much involved in water, but what I've really wanted to talk with you about is the sanitation, because almost half the world's population does not have adequate sanitation or no sanitation.
That's
it's
correct.
The ground around the house or out in the field. That's or right. The nearest tree or what have you. And yet I know that you've been working with a group that's called TerraBuilt Corporation International, and it's a sustainable building system. But you looked at it as a new way to do what?
Well, it's a game changer for us, because we're able to take the soil and some cement and create a block that is both structurally sound, and we can build anything with it. But we're doing eco-sanitation latrines, which is not new technology in the world, but what it is giving us the ability to lower the cost of building a latrine, to make a composting latrine, taking what the world considers as waste and turning it into something that's good in compost and fertilizer for sustainable farming.
Yeah, and we're going to show this in a minute, but I tell you, this is an incredible machine. This is what I understand, Bill, is called the green machine. Tell us what is going on here, because people are very active. They're in the middle of what looks like a cornfield, and tell us what's happening.
Well, what's happening in this picture is they're producing blocks we've had to harvest the soil, sieve it so that it gets all the rocks out of it. We've added 10% cement to it, sand if needed, and then the machine compresses that at 1,200 pounds per square inch pressure, and then it ejects one block every 15 seconds.
I tell you, this is absolutely incredible, and I know this is one of the things that I was very impressed the first time we met, is actually that you can actually teach people in these local communities so they start doing this themselves. It's not like we're exporting this from the United States or Western Europe, but they're actually using their own soil, their own labor, and building their own homes and the eco-sanity, as we're going to see in just a few minutes.
We want them to have a stake in their own future, and so yes, they've got sweat equity into their own toilet, basically.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. And Chat, I know there's a couple of books that you had mentioned in our conversation, Toxic Charity and When Helping Hurts. Now, both of these give me great pain. So what is Toxic Charity and When Helping Hurts? How does this really fit into your organization and your attitude and these 5 pillars that you shared with us?
The basic premise of those books is don't rob someone of their human dignity. People are inventive, they're creative, and with just a little push, they can do a lot to improve their own lives. So what do we mean by that? Everything we do is we say, do not create dependency. Only help a little bit to create something that's sustainable in the long term. On that, I mean, basically, as I mentioned earlier, the 5 pillars. I mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have to meet people where they are. So it's where are they, what do they need? Oftentimes, it's bringing in resources and then letting the Kenyans take the next step for them.
Yeah, and I really like the way that you speak, Chat, because you're really focused. You have start with One Kenya, but you really keep emphasizing that, wrap it around the society. And this is some of those blocks that you were making over there, Bill. And so how long does it they need to set like this? And then we're going to show where these are about ready to head.
Well, we can build with those bricks in about a day and a half to 3 days. They get a little harder as time goes on because of the cement content in it, but 3 days and we can build almost anything with it.
This is absolutely incredible. So you're just taking soil, a little bit of cement, a tiny little bit of water, I understand, and making these bricks, and then this is something you're going to build and it's going to be there for many years to come.
And as Chat calls these, adult Legos.
Adult Legos.
Because you just stack them, you see that they're tongue and grooved, and they lock together, and there's no mortar in between each course.
Now looking at the, getting to what we really want to talk about, which is the sanitation and using these TerraBuilt bricks and block, this is something that I think is absolutely fantastic because we have to get away as we provide more and more water for people. There's more and more waste. But we really haven't joined these two together, Bill, and I think this is what you're trying to do in Kenya.
Well, I think when you look at sanitation around the world, there's 2 ways of looking at it. You can have a linear system that assumes waste is waste and you're just trying to get rid of it. You have to treat that, and it still is effluent into the world. We're trying to create a closed system that is taking what the world considers as waste and turning it in, like I said earlier, into fertilizer. We have heard that as humans, we actually produce enough nitrogen and potassium and other nutrients that are what's needed to produce the food and the carbon footprint for us to be able to produce the food that we consume.
Yeah, well, I tell you, it's fantastic when you can do this and then you come up with something that looks like this, and you take those brick. So, Chat, being a lady and involved in this, but you're a very hands-on individual, as we saw those young ladies from the University of North Carolina, like that Carolina Blue. And how long does it take to put up something like this? And what did you have to go through in talking with not just the men, but the women and the children in these communities in Kenya to say, this is a good idea?
I think you just hit on one of the most important aspects. While one can be built in a week, the problem is if you have to do the training and the education first. Why do you want an eco latrine? Why is that better than the traditional pit latrine? A pit latrine is easy, so why do I want something that I now have to do maintenance on? So there's a huge educational component, but once you go through things and explain how actually, if you look at the whole circle when it comes to health care and food and everything, they don't realize many times that it's the feces that are carrying disease that then gets in their groundwater that makes them sick, which means they miss days of work and they then don't produce as much food. And it goes on and on. It's
it goes on and on. Looking at the back of this, we see these doors. Tell us a little bit about the biology and the chemistry of what we're looking at right here, Bill.
Well, those are two different chambers, and so you utilize.
I'm going to jump forward here just a little bit. We see the two guys helping to build this. I just
Well, they
love
have to
this
have a
photo.
little-
I couldn't leave this out. This was too rich.
Well, that is
Put this
Sam.
in.
That is Sam and Rufus. They were helping build along with Peter to help build this, and we basically have two harvesting chambers. You utilize one half of the eco-sanitation latrine at a time. As you're using it, you add carbon, you add sawdust, you add ash, corn husks, whatever, carbon to help in the breakdown of the pathogens that are in human feces.
Yeah.
We also have a urine diversion, which is really important because if the feces stays wet, it smells, it draws flies. There are no flies and no smell with this latrine.
Yeah, these are amazing because I saw these as I shared with you in Mexico, and these are just, I couldn't resist putting this in and tell these guys they'll be able to see themselves on international TV. But Chat, going over to the hygiene of this. This is WASH, so it's water, sanitation, hygiene. What's the hygiene and what's going on with these young ladies and also the young guys?
One of the things that amazes me is something that our generation grew up knowing from birth almost, and that is hand washing. So what they're doing here is we've done a whole class basically of hand washing, and also it goes back to the eco latrines. The fact, one of my favorite questions to ask in the middle of the hygiene presentation is, do you eat poop? And of course all the Kenyans go, oh, no! And then we go through, well, do you collect water off your roofs? Do you get the water out of the river? We go through a series of questions, and then we ask them again, do you eat poop? And then go, nudge their heart.
We only have a
yes.
few seconds, about 10 seconds, Bill. Where is your organization going over the next 5, 10, 15 years?
We hope that within 15 years, Kenya will have clean water, and I think it's attainable if we have the right partnerships in the world. Start with onekenya.org.
Well, thank you very much for being with us, Bill and Chat, as we create the